Hello, this is Rob Rotman for Voices of the Disabled. Today we have an interesting show about being gay and disabled. I can't think of any two more people that can talk about this with more authority than Mr. Benjamin Saylor, actor, playwright, and our own Kenneth Borst. I did want our good friend Jason Sanicki to be here, but alas, the gentleman has a job. What can I say? So, the reason I picked you three, and unfortunately Jason can't be here, two generations. Ben is the millennials, Ken is us baby boomers. So, gentlemen, both of you, tell us a little about, Kenny, for you first, what was it like growing up disabled?
Well, you know, growing up disabled, especially when you have been blind, I've been blind my entire life and I'm 65 years old. And one of the things was that in addition to, I'm unique from the standpoint that I was the youngest of four children. I have a brother that's blind, and so was my mother, because the eye condition is hereditary. We inherited it from the lineage of my maternal grandmother, and what happened is the women pass it down. The women are the carriers of it. The guys can inherit it, but can't pass it on according to physicians, which they've been wrong before, so I don't necessarily believe that.
Right.
But anyway, but the situation was that we were always treated like, you know, we didn't know anything, we couldn't do anything. And my mother and my brother Randy were very, they bought into the stuff, and they would be acquiescent to any sighted person that demanded that they prove something. Whereas I would never buy into that, and that was, you know, kind of the way that it was. And back in those days, disability, of course, has changed so much in terms of the spectrum and how it's broadened over the years. Because back in the day when I was a child, if you were blind, deaf, and of course they called the inability to walk crippled, and they called the intellectual disability retarded, which we don't anymore.
Right.
But those four things were considered quote unquote handicapped.
Right.
That was the classification back in those days, and nobody knew anything about like learning disabilities, even though they were out there.
Right. So, Ben, you came along a lot later. What was it like for you growing up disabled?
So I think a very important part of me growing up disabled was the fact that I grew up in, though I was born in New Jersey, I grew up in the western suburbs of the western Chicago suburbs, so specifically Naperville. And I think that Naperville especially likes to pat itself on the back a lot and toot their own horn. So when they saw me, they were like, woohoo, we have a disabled person here. We want to show him off and also make you all aware that we are accepting of him.
Wow.
So I was kind of shoved in the spotlight a lot. And that kind of, in a way, got me into acting, because I was like, okay, I don't really want to be in the spotlight simply because I'm a dwarf. Or have a learning disability or something like that, but I also kind of want to stay in the spotlight.
Right. Yeah.
So it was very interesting, because there was, of course, like a lot of the commonly known issues being like, people are mean. Especially, one of the things, it took me so long to fully understand of my condition of achondroplasia, which is a type of dwarfism, because when I was very little, my mom would be like, okay, so I talked to my friends, they're gonna send over their kid to have a play date, you know, as parents did. And then my mom would say, and I did mention that you're a little person. And as a kid, I was always like, but why did you tell them that?
Right.
And she's like, well, they're going to find out.
Right.
And in my mind, I always thought that the only thing that made me different was that I was a little bit shorter.
Right.
I was just like, no, they'll just think I'm a short person, not a little person, not disabled. I don't want them to know that.
No.
And of course, that's not how I feel now. That's what it was like as a kid, and I kind of felt embarrassed until becoming an adult. And luckily, one of the great things about when I was growing up, specifically when I was in middle school, that was the resurgence of like the TLC shows with all of the little people. They have like Little People Big World, The Little Couple, The Little Chocolatiers, or something like that.
So you're able to see images. Yeah.
So everyone is like, oh, is that how it works? I'm like, yes, I do need a stool for everything.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, Kenny, for you, of course, when we were growing up, you obviously had Ray Charles, Jose Feliciano, Stevie Wonder, and were you proud that those people were out there performing?
Well, basically, I would not have really thought too much about it one way or the other, because as a child I was in denial. Basically, I wanted to be like everybody else, so I wouldn't even acknowledge that I was blind. Pretty much. I mean, I knew it in my private thoughts, but I wouldn't say it out loud. And basically, when Stevie Wonder first recorded that song, Fingertips, I think, what was that, back in 1963? So I was 10 years old then. And it's like, I got tired of everybody, they would play the record, and the boy who, and they would say, Kenny, the boy who recorded that record is blind. And it's like, so he's blind, so what? Big deal, And of course, I didn't want to be considered different. So it always made me mad when everybody dwelled on, oh, he's blind, but he could be anybody else that recorded that song, and nobody would have dwelled on anything.
Both of you, in terms of your education, what barriers did you have? Kenny, you first.
Well, the barriers that I had was that, first of all, Indiana, the state of Indiana, where I came from, the town of Hammond, the state of Indiana was so Neanderthal, and I think they probably were the last ones to get rid of it. But they had this law that stated, okay, a blind child could go through kindergarten in their public school system, but before entering first grade, you had to be evaluated by a psychologist. In my case, it would be the Lake County, Indiana Bureau of Mental Health. And the psychologist, of course, I was evaluated there by somebody who knew nothing about disabilities. He was a psychologist, but that doesn't mean he knew anything about disabilities. And what would anybody know about disabilities back in the late 50s, even if you were a psychologist? And at the time that I was evaluated, I was 5 years old and I was real sick. I had the mumps with carrying a temp of 104. So, and they wouldn't change the appointment. And so I had to be tested anyway. I was relatively non-responsive due to the illness, but 2 questions were used against me on the test. And the doctor, the psychologist, told my mother that I was, again, I apologize for this term. It's not politically correct today, but that's what they said back in those days. So I apologize. He called me educably mentally retarded, stating that he elaborated that I would not progress mentally beyond the age of 12, nor scholastically beyond 3rd or 4th grade. That's very interesting because I'm the only one in my immediate family that graduated from high school in 4 years.
Okay, Ben, what was it like for you growing up disabled?
So, growing up for me and in my education was, I know, a lot easier than I guess your situation, as well as a lot easier for, I've learned a lot of people in my situation today. The reason being is because I was lucky enough to have a mother who wanted to know everything about what needed to be done, to the point that when I was in like getting out of elementary school, starting middle school, my mom was actually a special ed teacher within the within the school system, and then she became a guidance counselor. So she was able to figure out everything I needed and help me advocate for my education. But also she taught me how to advocate for myself. So I was able to figure out, like, be in the room at the IEP meetings and say, you know what, I understand that this is what you're providing me. I may not need this stuff, or I do believe I need this. So they were very willing to work with me, both through my school and because my mom was making sure that they were willing to work with me. And so I was fortunate enough to be in a school system that had the resources and had the willingness to actually use those resources. Like, for example, because I am of short stature, things that not many people realize is, like, sure, my legs don't touch the ground, but the issue isn't simply my legs aren't touching the ground. The issue is that now all this weight is being put on my legs and I'm not pushing them up. There's no circulation going through my legs. My legs fall asleep if I am, like, sitting on a regular school chair. And so, like, my school built me my own chair that had, like, a little step for me to put my feet on. It pushed me forward. It had seats, or it had, it might have had, not seats, it had arms to it. That's the word I'm looking for. It had arms to it, unlike all the other chairs in the school. And they gave me another desk because they knew that because I was so close, I couldn't, like, as easily pull back and put stuff under the desk like every other kid did. So I would have another desk with a box/organizer on it, so I didn't have to reach down and put everything down there. So as far as, like, school specifically goes, it was, you know, it was much easier for me than others, even other little people today.
Because I know, Kenny, you've always said that, you know, Braille was how you learned, and we talked about this on the show before, but I know that there are some people who want to take, kids are not growing up today with Braille, are they? Or
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that, Rob, because that was mentioned when I did the interview here for the with Marilyn Green with the Washington Seminar with the National Federation of the Blind. Back when I was a child, and of course this was in the 50s and 60s, and I graduated high school in 74. Well, back in that day, 50% of blind children K through 12 in North America were learning Braille. Today, it's only 10%. They're trying to abolish Braille due to saying that technology has replaced it. And we at the National Federation of the Blind, an organization of more than 50,000 strong, are saying, you can't do that. Has literacy replaced your has technology replaced your literacy? And of course, a sighted person is going to respond with, oh no. Well then, if it hasn't replaced your literacy, why should it replace ours?
So, gentlemen, Kenny, when did you realize you were gay, and what was your reaction? You're growing up in a medium-sized town in Indiana, a very conservative state. What was the reaction of your family?
Basically, well, you know, I was in denial about that for a long time, and of course, back in the day, I realized that I was different very early in life and didn't know what to call it. But the problem with it was that I grew up in a culture that was so homophobic back in the 60s. And of course, you know, Indiana had always been a red state, but being, and it still is, but being that as it may, everywhere at that time in that culture, of course, the word gay wasn't coined until like the late 60s. So before that, everybody was a homosexual. But the problem with that was you didn't dare say that out loud. You might get shot. And because being gay, of course, was considered a crime. It first was considered a mental illness. The history on it, from what I understand, was that it was a mental illness until the American Psychiatric Association eliminated it from the list of mental illnesses back in 1938. Well, then it became criminalized, and you could be jailed for being found guilty having sex with someone of the same sex, and that's, you know, we all that was what the Stonewall riots back in 1969 that took place 2 days after my 16th birthday, June 28th, 1969. I would have turned 16 June 26th, 1969, but and of course, people thought that I was. People taunted me about it. In school, certainly at the School for the Blind, they did quite a bit. And in the public schools, a little bit, not too much. But you couldn't talk about it. But basically, I was also in a unique situation from the standpoint that I hit puberty late due to the fact that I found this out, and of course, in music class, that boys who come from a European background tend to develop late in terms of your voice. Your voice doesn't change till you're like 14 or 15 years old. So I got in trouble because of that, and was taunted a lot because of that.
So, Ben, when did you come out of the closet, and what has it been like?
So I came out of the closet when I was 16, so a junior in high school.
Wow.
And how I went about doing that kind of was I actually performed a piece at my high school's monologue show.
Oh.
It was basically an open mic that you had to actually audition for, and they worked to actually like workshop your piece and everything. And so I mean, I came out before doing this piece, but like I was kind of like just telling friends. I wasn't really open, not until actually doing this piece, which was, I called it Coming Out of the Cupboard. So it was just all about coming out as a little person. And one of the things I've noticed coming out as a little person, I don't have as, especially where I lived, because the high school that I went to, everyone's parents were conservative Republicans.
Wow.
All the kids were liberal Democrats despite their parents, basically. So, I mean, you know, of course, everyone kind of came out with fairly liberal ideas after after that era and my age group, kind of. So I was I was lucky enough to have support from my friends. I don't really see as much homophobia directed specifically towards me. Like, you know, I look on the TV and I see just very mean, vile people talking about it, but like I don't actually have people come up to me. But I've noticed that the reason why is because no matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm wearing, who I'm kissing, who I'm having sex with, people are going to be like, oh, but I didn't know you could be gay and a little person. I've had, it was a very interesting experience, especially when I went to DePaul, because DePaul University in Chicago is very liberal. Though it's a Christian university, it is not a conservative university by any means. And it's very liberal, and it's very helpful for people like me to be able to go there and feel comfortable to be out and open and talk about it. But like even then I had people who were like going there and who were kind of confused at the idea that you could be more than just a little person or just my disability. And I've had people ask me, so Ben, is it, and this is how they word it, Ben, would it be a fetish if you liked a normal person? Yeah. So questions like that, it's like, okay, it's not necessarily, so I've noticed that it's a lot of people saying I need to learn, but the information I currently have is not correct. So they weren't still in disbelief after I came out and explained it to them. They weren't like, I still don't believe it. They were open to be like, oh, okay, now I know this. Now I know that it's possible for dwarfs to be gay. It's like, yeah.
So where have you faced, both of you gentlemen, where have you faced more discrimination as a gay person or as a disabled person, would you say?
disabled person.
Yeah.
Definitely as a disabled person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because disabled is the thing that everyone knows instantly about us.
Right.
I mean, unless I'm wearing a shirt that says
Right.
gay, educated, petty. One of my favorites. No one
Yeah,
really.
see, I agree with you on that one because it's like pretty much nobody knows that I'm gay unless I actually disclose that. But my blindness, they see that right away because I'm out in public. I'm either with my guide dog or with my long white cane. So automatically the blindness is it's right there.
And you feel the same.
Yeah, and not only that, but what disappoints me, I don't know if this is, I'm sorry if this is an upcoming question, but what I've noticed as an intersection between my disability and the gay community is that I've had a lot of people, like I'm trying to, enjoy the new technology we have, enjoy things like Tinder, Grindr, Match, and the like. And I'll get messages from people and be like, oh yes, someone's interested. And they open with, hey, I've always wanted to have sex with a little person. And it's just kind of like, oh, great. Kind of wish you had a better pickup line. But and sometimes I've had to actually, I mean, obviously I wasn't forced to, but I felt like I had to go out with some of these people because I'm like, well, this person was the least inappropriate. If I don't go out with him, who am I going to go out with?
Right. Both of you, Kenny, you obviously lived during the AIDS crisis. What was it like living at that time?
Oh, well, definitely it was horrible because all that old homophobia that we thought was abandoned had returned. It reemerged with a vengeance, and of course the religious right really jumped on that because they went into this, well, and they actually said it. They publicly said it. AIDS is God's punishment for your being gay. It's God's scourge on you for being gay, and all of that stuff. And of course, that same thing came up when they were voting on marriage equality. That the churches were at the forefront of who protested against that.
And Ben, for you, you're obviously too young to remember when it was a crisis. But what does it say that, to you as a young gay person, disabled person, that the gay community didn't go away? We're not going to go away.
To me, that was like looking back on it now. I am very glad I didn't have to live through that. No offense to those who did, simply because that is a terrifying time from what I've heard and what I know. But at the same time, it also, in a sense, makes me feel proud that we were able to get that stepping stone, which that was kind of a one step forward, 3 steps back sort of situation, given obviously AIDS has killed a lot of people. But the fact that we were able to get past that and say, no, we're still here. This is not a curse for being gay. This is simply a disease, and we will get through this as a community, and we will show that we are strong and resilient. And I was really happy when I hear those parts.
You see, my biggest frustration is that dealing with life it's kind of changed some, but it's still sort of. But the biggest frustration that I face today and have faced for many, many years is, even with being blind and gay, is that there is a lot of homophobia among the blind population, yet simultaneously a lot of ableist bigotry among gay people. And it's really a huge thing. And as a matter of fact, my brother thinks that I should write a book about my life, my autobiography, and include all of those experiences. Because I'm somebody that uniquely has had a lot of bizarre things happen to me over the years.
I know both of you loved the movie Brokeback Mountain, and it was such a remarkable movie. How did both of you feel that, the director is straight and the actors in the leads are straight? Did that have any problem for you, do you think?
I kind of have ambivalent feelings about that. I think I would have liked to have seen people actually who were gay acting in the movie, because it would have been more authentic, and everything. But you could tell that it was straight people acting, and they were poor enough actors to not be able to really get through. You could feel the vibe, the discomfort there of acting in that role.
Interesting.
So
How about
it
you,
would have
Ben?
seemed being more authentic.
I think if Brokeback Mountain were to come out today,
Right.
I would be very disappointed about the fact that there were straight actors.
right.
I think at the time it was fantastic.
Right.
It's actually kind of funny because when I first came out to my mother, what had happened was I came out and she was like, "Oh, okay," because I was very serious with her. I'm like, "I have to sit down. I have to tell you something." And then I told her I was gay, and then she's just like, "Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to tell me you failed a test." And then that's when it became apparent to her that, oh, now that I've come out, what's the perfect movie to watch together but Brokeback Mountain? Because it just so happened to have been on right as I was coming out to my mom. And instead of turning the channel as she normally would, she just looked at me and shrugged and said, "I guess we can watch this now."
Oh, that's
So it was kind of funny with that, but also I do agree with that, that there was kind of an obvious uncomfortableness between the actors, but at the same time, like back then, good. Now, if it were to come out now, maybe not.
Right.
But at the same time, like asking these kinds of questions makes me think we should ask these questions about a lot more roles, because we
Right.
get so fed up, and I'm not saying anything bad about this, because I agree with being fed up about when we have like whitewashed casting and things
Yeah.
like that. How there's recent controversy over a casting choice with Scarlett Johansson
Oh, right.
playing a trans individual.
Right.
And so like we have things like that, but no one ever talks about the disability
Right.
casting specifically. I mean, because we have people who play blind people, who play people in wheelchairs,
Right.
who don't need to be. And I think almost one of the most insulting ways they go about doing this is if you've seen Snow White and the Huntsman, or a movie called, I believe it was Little Man, with the Marlon and the Wayans brothers.
Wayans brothers.
Yeah, but so what they do is they get a little person, and then they CG a known actor's face on that little person to make it look like they're a little person too, like to the point where we're actually getting a little person to play the character, but then CGing someone else's face.
Right.
We're okay with that. That's different.
Yeah.
But having a white person play
Right.
a character that should have normally been a Japanese person, or a woman playing, or a cis woman playing a transgender male, like we are so worried about that, but no. Everyone says a disability is different, and so.
Yeah.
You know,
Like,
and I think, Kenny,
yeah.
you would agree. You know, you're Techie's favorite audience. I am angry when I go to theaters. Why can't Techie be doing this role? So,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And to me, I mean, in my never to be humbled opinion, and I will say this publicly. I mean, she's in being a blind guy myself, having a disability. I mean, I wouldn't compliment somebody just because they're disabled. She's a better actress than anybody I've ever seen on TV.
well, that's neat. So, thank you both, Kenny and Ben. I'd like to have a further discussion. I apologize that both Kenny and Ben are white. Please, we welcome different ethnicities to continue this great work that we've started.